All right, let's do this. Let's do this thought experiment. Vice President Kamala Harris wants to get rid of assault rifles. She wants a complete ban on them, right? And you got to ask yourself why, right? What is Vice President Kamala Harris trying to protect the American people from? Is she protecting us from mass shootings? Is she protecting our children from being gunned down utilizing assault rifles? Right? Now, ask yourself the other question. What kind of crimes, what kind of things are prevented with assault rifles? What kind of things can we prevent with assault rifles? Right, we know the things that can happen with assault rifles. We know that we can have mass shootings. We know that we can have mass shootings at churches, at schools, at hospitals, all these bad things. But what are the things that we can do with assault rifles? We associate these weapons with, civilian violence. We associate these weapons with civilian violence against civilians. But let's also recognize that these assault rifles are also utilized in against protest movements. And Vice President Kamala Harris is calling for an assault rifle ban for all civilians, but not for the police, not for the National Guard, right? She's calling for it for civilians. Now, whose side do you think Kamala Harris is going to be on? Do you think that she's going to be in favor of protest movements? Or is she going to be in favor of utilizing assault rifles against civilian populations? Because it's all fine if the ban goes for not only unsworn civilians like you and I, but also sworn civilians such as law enforcement and police officers. Now, what happens when your law enforcement is that much more heavily armed than the civilian population? Because right now, law enforcement does not outnumber the civilian population. But what they do have is they have a monopoly on violence. Meaning that the biggest killer is not civilians, it is the government. And the reason why it's the government is because the government is the only entity that has the right to commit violence without necessarily being held accountable. Why? Because we delegate those rights. We grant that right to the government in exchange for all these protections. Okay, government, you don't want me taking justice into my own hands. So when I am wronged, it is your job, government, to go and do violence to the people who have done violence to me. It is your job when I'm being robbed, when I'm being held at gunpoint. It is your job, Mr. Government, to shoot down the perpetrators of these things. And anytime that the government fails to do that, well, that means that that's a power, that's a capability that you have to put back into the hands of the people. And currently, they want to take that capability away from the people. The question is always, well, what do you need an AR-15 for? Well, the same question can be asked, why do we need nuclear weapons? Why does anyone need 1,700 nuclear weapons? And your answer will be like, well, our adversaries have nuclear weapons. Okay, well, the people who want to do me harm have assault rifles. The people who don't care about the law, the people who don't care about my rights, they have assault rifles. So you're telling me that I'm going to put myself in a disadvantageous position All because my government is afraid of me having assault rifles. Something to think about.